Hi, my name is Lisa Richter. I'm the Director of Industry Outreach and Growth for CSIA. Welcome to the Masterclass. Before we get started, a quick word about CSIA. Probably most of you here are familiar with the association, but if you are not, all you really need to know is that CSIA's mission is to help SIs build better businesses. Sorry, Camila, I did not tell you to advance the slide, but now I will advance the slide. How do we do that? Well, for starters, we have a team of volunteers who have crowdsourced a best practices manual to help SIs scale their businesses. In fact, the BP manual regularly reviews and updates the manual, currently on its sixth edition, and the committee is already making plans for the next version. Next slide, please. For those companies that want to take the best practices to the next level, CSIA also offers a certification program that includes a third-party audit. Many companies find that this audit is extremely helpful for them to understand their business and to scale. Next slide, please. With thousands of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange helps SIs, industry suppliers, and manufacturers connect and do business. For SIs and partners, it provides a platform to support your content and SEO marketing efforts, position yourself as a thought leader, and nurture prospects during their complicated buyer's journey. Next slide, please. If you're not currently a member, now is a great time to join. CSA membership dues are annual, and since we are midway through the year, that means dues are half off. Membership provides you and your entire team a full lineup of virtual events and other resources, from accounting to sales to operations to training, 365 days per year. Next slide. If you want to just get a flavor of CSIA and its members, I encourage you to listen to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. CSIA members talk all things industrial automation, and it's just a great way to hear what your peers are up to. Next slide, please. A couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over to today's speakers. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. That helps us stay organized. I also ask that you please turn off any automatic note-taking applications. At this time, those are against CSIA's policy, and I appreciate you understanding. That being said, the session is being recorded, and you will get a link to the recording in the next day or so. At this time, I would like to turn it over to today's speakers. Take it away, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Lisa. Let me pull this up. Perfect. All right, grateful to be here. Thankful for CSIA giving us the time. So, I'm Dalton. I'm with Strata R&D Tax Group. We help integrators take advantage of the R&D tax credit. So, this is for your clients, and as you can see on the first slide, you have clients that are leaving money on the table. So we're one of the line items that when you introduce us to your clients, we're not asking for money. We're going to put money back into their pockets. So the biggest insight is you have everything that you need to unlock this. Your clients already trust you. You have a lot of clients. The timing's built in. And this helps clients stay loyal, right? Again, this isn't asking to spend a bunch of money. We're going to help you put money back in their pocket. So we help create loyal customers for you. The opportunity is that most businesses have never claimed this credit, especially integrators. I'll get to what the R&D credit is here in just a minute, but typically, when people hear R&D, they think of, Bunsen burners and beakers and science and manufacturing. And while those are obviously great candidates for the research and development credit, it also expands into other industries that are less well known. But why they don't claim the credit right now? Obviously, they don't know this credit exists. A lot of people, when we introduce this credit for the first time, have never heard of it. Their accountant has never brought it up, and that's mainly because their accountants don't specialize in it. Your CPA, your current accountant, probably just doesn't understand it deeply enough, although they're aware of it. So we work alongside of your accountant and their accountants and their CPAs. So we don't do any of the prep and file. We just do the prep for the R&D credit and then hand over the study. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But We've had some really good case studies so far as integrators. We've worked with hundreds of integrators at this point. One of our founders comes from the space, so we're deeply embedded in that industry, and we understand it pretty well. So let's talk about what the R&D tax credit is. It's a dollar for dollar federal tax credit for qualifying businesses. We'll get into what qualifies for R&D here in just a second, but a couple things to know really fast. Dollar for dollar federal tax credit. It's a non-refundable credit, so you're not going to get money back. So if you paid, someone pays $50,000 in taxes, and we find $100,000 in an R&D credit through a study. You'll get reimbursed for that credit up to 50,000, and then you can carry forward that credit up to 20 years. That's important to know, because it will never take your tax liability beyond zero like some refundable credits would. But with all that being said, this tax credit has been in our tax code for a very long time. It first got introduced, I believe it was like the late 70s, early 80s. It became officially hard-coded into the tax code in 2015. It's gone through a lot of changes since then. Our previous administration had made some changes to how it could be calculated and taken. With the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last July, it became kind of reinstated to its former glory. That's kind of how I put it, of like, now you can expense things in the same year. You don't have to amortize, things like that. So what it does is it allows us to go back 3 years and find up to 3 years and find and recapture any credit that may have been missed. But this credit is very well established. Some people think it's kind of like the COVID era credits, like PPC, ERC. It's not. This is more like a general business credit in the sense that there's no like automatic review process at the IRS. This is just taken. We can talk about what happens if the IRS has questions. In fact, we'll bring that up in just a minute, but this is just a general business credit. You get it right away. So what qualifies? Okay, yeah, we got that. So lots of software development qualifies. Typically, if you're like doing custom designing and engineering, systems integrations. So these are like custom systems integrations. You're making these bespoke software, you're writing bespoke code, things like that, prototyping and testing. In fact, there's a whole, 4-part test. Part of that 4-part test is being, the process of experimentation and new capabilities. I think this one also trips people up. So I believe it was in like 2007, 2008. Prior to 2007, 2008, the R&D tax code said it had to be like new and novel to the world. In 2007, 2008, they changed the definition, the wording a little bit to make it new and novel to you. So, or your client, right? So if an integrator is going into a fresh, commercial building, and we're writing everything from scratch and we're building it from the ground up, that counts as like new and novel to that situation, right? There's some nuance there that I don't really want to bore everybody with, but if you have questions, Eric's on the call. He's our resident CPA and expert, so he can explain that in more detail. Another, while I'm on this, I kind of mentioned this, another industry that takes this credit are architects. And when you think about architects, they're not building never before seen buildings or using never before seen building material. But when they design these buildings and go to translate it in, they have the designs, they have their plan, and then they go try to put it in the real world. It's hardly ever one-to-one. And that kind of idea, generally speaking, qualifies for R&D, that kind of process. So you have the 4-part test that comes from the IRS. You have to meet all 4 criteria. So the first part of the test is a permitted purpose. This is a process, product, technique, or software that aims to improve the quality, functionality, and reliability of something else. Number two, it has to be technological in nature. So I always think of STEM. That's a safe way to think about it. But that includes, computer science, anything in the physical or biological sciences, engineering, stuff like that. Integrators typically fall into that computer science and engineering piece. The third part of the test is the elimination of uncertainty. So if you have to ask any of these questions, like how will it look, what will it look like, how will it work, can we do it, things like that, those are generally good questions to, if you're asking those at the beginning, that's a small amount of uncertainty or risk, right? Like, we're going to design it, it's going to look good, we might design custom mounts and brackets, we might map out the way that we're going to get this legacy hardware to talk to new software or vice versa, or we might have to, we're walking into a new resi or commercial build and we're going to have to build that from scratch depending on what the customer needs. But we're not exactly sure how it's going to look in the end because it's going to change because of the fourth part of the test, which is the process of experimentation. So once we get all of that in there and we flip the switch and something breaks or something doesn't work, it has to be, there's a systematic process of evaluating what we do to fix that. The IRS has kind of like some specific language in there as far as like it's not guessing, right? And whenever we talk about that with a integrator, it's almost like offensive if you did say you're just guessing until it gets right. No, there's like a very specific way that we start figuring out what broke and how to fix it and what we need to replace it with and things like that. So that does cover a lot of the process of experimentation that needs to happen. In fact, one of our clients that we have is Argenta Solutions. A previous credit for them was well over $300,000. But the cool thing is this was a 3-year look back, but they get to take this every year. And I think I mentioned that earlier, but this is also what makes it unique from like a COVID era credit. You get to take it every year. You are eligible for it every year. There may be years where more custom integration is, the more custom jobs you do is lower than other years, because it's also important to remember that this doesn't count if you're like installing a Ring system, right? Or like we've put 1 million TVs up in a Buffalo Wild Wings and we're just going to do that again for Buffalo Wild Wings. That first job might have been R&D, but the second and third and fourth Buffalo Wild Wings aren't, right? So you have that opportunity, and like I said, Argenta, when we did that 3-year look back, was great. Their average credit per qualified employee was about $4,700, almost $5,000. Qualified employee, that's also important to note. I might have had it on here. I think we'll have it on the next one. Okay. But it's also important to note here that you're a qualifying employee. These are people like project managers, technicians, anybody who's directly involved with, so like designers too. So it just depends on the integration company. A lot of integration companies can have all 3 of those roles in the same person. They can call them different things, but if you're helping in any kind of design or installation or troubleshooting and testing, that's what would be a qualified employee. Typically back office employees like accountants and other people like that, accountants, HR, stuff like that, those don't qualify because they don't have any labor in those systems. So it's really easy though. How it works is all you have to do is identify the client. So based on what you've heard so far, if you have somebody that might work, go through your book of business, identify who you think could use this, make the introduction, and then once you make the introduction, we handle everything else. So what we do once you make the intros, we'll book a call, and on that first call, the whole idea is to, number one, introduce the credit, make sure that they're a qualified business and they have qualifying activities. And then what we do is we do a free estimated benefit analysis. So we before we have you guys sign any, or sorry, have your customer sign anything or like lock anything in or commit to anything, we'll make based on a short intake form that they fill out that asks for general business info, some tax forms or tax information, whichever they prefer. We'll give them a conservative estimate on what this would look like, and that gives them the opportunity to see on paper like actual numbers and real things. The R&D study takes about 45 days. So if somebody gets that EBA, they like what they see and commit to the study and commit to the uh, terms and everything, it takes us about 45 days. And the hardest part of that conversation is I usually have to go back and say, hey, we found you more money, right, than what we estimated you, which is great for everyone involved most of the time, because sometimes more money, more problems. I'm just kidding. Anyway, but we handle everything from there. So the R&D study is all taken care of. It's a white glove experience. Your clients don't really have to do anything during that study. We'll ask for 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours of their time during that whole 45 days, and most of it's documentation gathering. It's going to be things like helping us set up surveys, helping us get surveys answered. There's a lot of ways we can do that. So it doesn't take a ton of time to do that study, at least on your client's end. And then obviously at the end of it, everybody wins. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it works. So what's in it for you? I've kind of brought this up a couple times, which is all you do is bring us the relationship and your client. We'll treat that like gold. We'll give them, like I mentioned, the white glove experience. We have compensation for referrals, and there's really no risk to you or your client. I mentioned this before, but if we get on that first call and they're not qualified or whatever, for whatever reason, that's pretty rare, but if for whatever reason they're not, we spent 15 minutes of our time for education that might be useful in the future. But there, like I said, for those first couple of meetings, there's no money changing hands. There's no commitment. We're not trying to fire someone's CPA or accountant. You also get to differentiate your book of business, right? So you get to add more things and help bring value to your clients. We'll equip you with everything, so you don't have to be an R&D tax expert. We have one pagers, we have FAQ pages, we have CPA white papers, everything that we need. And that actually brings up a good point. If a client wants to bring their CPA or accountant into the mix, totally cool. We want everybody to feel comfortable with what's happening. And then obviously we do the heavy lifting. Not only do we do the R&D study, we also at the end of that study deliver all of the documents, but also a defense packet, because part of our commitment and part of the agreement is that if this ever does come under IRS scrutiny for whatever reason, we will help support and defend the R&D portion of that credit. We haven't had, to my knowledge at this point, we haven't had an IRS audit with any of our clients on the R&D side up to this point. Maybe Eric has more info there, but up to this point, I don't think we've had any. But we're really confident in the way that we do our studies and the way that we provide the information to the IRS and to you. Is highly defensible, because we run these R&D studies based on two philosophies: ethical and defensible. So the terminology that I use when we do these studies is a step back principle, which means we look at projects and we say, on this project, tell us what you did, right? So we use job tracking, time tracking, and surveys to really go through each of these with a fine-tooth comb to not only maximize the credits that you're eligible for, but also defend them, because it doesn't make any sense to tell the IRS you get $100 million in credit and then we can't defend it. So we have skin in the game just like you. Other than that, that's kind of the spiel. That's the high level. Um, and for the introductions that you guys make, there's no really risk. If you go through your book and you see and you're not sure, just send them to us. We'll treat them like gold. We'll make sure that they're good, and if they qualify, we'll take it. Uh, we'll take it and run with it. If they don't, we'll let you know and make sure everybody's cool and everybody's good. But you can scan the code here to make the introduction for your clients. This is the best way to do it. That makes it really easy for us to keep track of that client's strategic partner, so that you guys can not only stay involved and know what's happening, but also when the deal closes, you guys can get paid. So we'll know that. But that's the high level of R&D. If I missed anything, Eric, let me know. But otherwise, I'm ready
Hey,
to
Dalton.
answer any questions.
Yeah, we have a question from Aaron Pfeiffer. And I was going to reply in the chat, but I wanted to make sure that those listening were able to hear this. It's a good question. So what level of engagement is required from the client? We have some international clients that accounting would likely see this as an annoying request, even though it would save us a ton.
Yeah. So there's a couple parts to that question. When you say international clients, are they doing business in the US, Aaron?
As in billion-dollar companies, is what he said.
$1 billion companies. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know that he can speak, so if you just want to clarify
sure,
a
sure,
little
sure.
bit.
So so international, yeah, a couple things I want to mention there. They have to be US based, right, Eric?
Pay U.S. taxes. So
Yeah,
international
okay.
doesn't automatically disqualify you, but the work has to be performed within the United States or possession of the United States.
Okay, cool. As far as like, $1 billion companies, we've worked with really, really high ticket companies who do, that much in 9 figures in revenue. Um, yeah, I mean, typically what we do, the companies are US based. My point is they don't care about us. Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so he's saying the companies are U.S. based. His point is they don't care about saving 100,000.
Sure.
They're spending billions. He's more
Typically, yeah,
how
here's what,
is the question.
yeah, we wouldn't need much engagement from them. Honestly, in this case, it'd be like a couple forms and maybe like a point of contact, but not too much for them. I will say this though, the one caveat here is like typically when I see 9 figure companies like this, they have an R&D department. Like they have accountants on staff who do this. If they don't, I'd be really surprised. If we end up doing an engagement with them, we don't need much. Maybe just one point of contact, and we'll have to gather the info. But other than that, yeah.
Question from Jack, and I can take this one. He
Sure.
says, I am a system integrator. Was this presentation for me? Sounds like it may be for people that may refer you to an integrator. So yeah, I think something worth noting for those listening, right? There are direct clients on this call. There are integrators who can actually take the claim. I think what this presentation kind of does is it gives you an idea of how we operate as a company. A lot of our business does not come from direct to client marketing, right? We have a channel of strategic partners, whether that's a CPA or even in this vertical, this system integration vertical. We actually partner with those integrators that are well known to get introductions to other integrators, and through that we have a referral system. So yes, while you probably are a client, Jack, you also probably know a lot of the heavy hitters in the vertical, and we could work together as a strategic partner to get introductions to the others. And this presentation was so you understand how we operate. Hope that was able to answer that question.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And then another question for you, Dalton, and probably you, Eric. What actually makes a study, a research and development tax credit study, defensible versus an aggressive claim?
I can start off
Yeah.
with that
So,
one.
oh, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, really, it comes down to the work performed and the detail level of the documentation. And so it's not just, hey, one conversation, We go through, it sounds like you're doing about this much R&D. Let's go ahead and put it in there. We have professional, dedicated surveys for every employee in your company that ask very detailed questions that they take, and it determines how they spend their day. And based off of that is how much R&D work they do. We compare that to industry averages. We compare that to company averages as well. We have those deep conversations. We go into contracts. And because we do this every day, we can do it rather quickly, right? And we know the questions he asks and the conversations they have. So it's not a huge lift on the clients, but it's really getting that documentation and what Dalton described earlier as that package that we prepare for you. Going in with every study we do, we prepare a memorandum that states what the R&D credit is in detail in the tax code with the laws associated with it, and then how your activities meet those requirements and apply towards that credit. And so I think that's really kind of the defensibility is not just doing a quick, estimate, which some people do. It's like, oh, it sounds like it's about this,
Mhm.
but really having a defensible backup based off the testing and conversations that we had, I think is what makes it defensible in the end.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Jack, yes, we'll follow up with you. Appreciate you putting that in the chat. Another question that came up, probably for Dalton or Eric as well. Uh, what happens if my study, right? I decide to go with you guys and my study actually gets audited. Have you guys been through that? What exactly do you do to help me?
Yeah, I'll let Eric answer that one.
So we work with you. If the IRS does want to look at it, this is not fringe of the tax code, as Dalton said. It's not an automatic review or an audit. But if your return gets selected and they want to look at the R&D, we work side by side with you. So we take a look at the request letter that first comes in. We make sure we have all the documentation or additional documentation they're asking for, and so we help you prepare that response to the IRS. And go over everything. So we're at your disposal there to work side by side. So a good response to the IRS takes both parties. And so if they want further detail, we'll work with you to gather that and get it in and get it into a form that's acceptable by the IRS for that audit. So, and we've done that a number of times. We don't get audited very often with these, but sometimes it could be a completely other situation that the client had, and the IRS wants to look, and they look at everything. And so when we've had that, we've been able to reply very quickly because we do the work up front, which I think is back to your original question there too, JP, on the defensibility. Waiting until the IRS asks to see it to start really doing the work doesn't look great, and you have a certain number of days to respond to the IRS, but they're humans, right? And they're biased. And if they can tell that you've never really looked at this until they ask to see more information, already they're in a very defensive position. When you can respond quickly, like I said, and you can send a 20-page memorandum within 24 hours, or within 2 hours, say, hey, here's why we took it. That puts you in a very strong position of defensibility there.
Great.
Hmm.
Good deal.
Amen. Yeah. Any other questions or any other concerns, anything like that?
I am checking the chat right now. I don't see any other questions coming through.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions, you would like more information, I know there are direct clients on here. Please scan that code. You can use that code to submit your information, and we would love to chat with you guys.
Actually, I'm going to call you a liar because there is a question in the Q&A spot. I know we were looking at the chat, but there's also the Q&A over here. So there
Okay,
is a
great.
question
Oh.
in there. And it is, what is really different here? This sounds like every other R&D pitch I've ever heard. All of my credits were rejected. Looks like Indiana. All my Indiana credits were rejected.
Hmm. I know that Indiana has well, were the federal credits rejected too? Indiana might be one of those states. I'm not super familiar with the Indiana R&D credit, but like Florida, for example, has one where you have to be in a very specific industry. You can only take so much, things like that. Eric, do you have any insight on Indiana?
I don't on Indiana specifically.
Yeah, I was gonna
We
say that.
research all the states. and go into
Yeah,
it. But yeah, but offhand, I don't think I've done one specifically for Indiana.
sure. But to that point, like, yeah, there's good news there, which is like the R&D credit is the R&D credit. Like, if a firm takes it or an accountant takes it, there's really not much different. I know that the big ones that we do are obviously the audit, defense, and support, and then the delivery packet, and then that white glove approach. We would have to see the Indiana. We would have to look at that situation. It sounds like if the only thing that happened was Indiana rejected them, then that's probably a very specific Indiana law or regulation. But
Any
you're
other questions?
probably, I was going to say, but you're probably still eligible for the federal credit.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I was just going to say, JP, any other questions on your end? I know you had a short list at one point.
I think we were able to get through a couple of those. At the moment, we don't have any more.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, then I guess it's time for me to do my last little spiel. My colleague Camila will put up my last couple of slides here, and I will find my script. All right, on behalf of CSA, I would like to thank our speakers from this session today and for this informative discussion. Of course, thank you for attending. Be sure to bookmark the CSIA events calendar so you don't miss any upcoming events. Next slide, please, Camila. And that's a wrap. Once again, thanks for joining us and have a great day.